Man, if this had come out in the 90s, some fast food restaurant would be offering 17 different sauces as a movie tie-in. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 2025 sci-fi satire, Mickey 17. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and even some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Mickey 17 stars Robert Pattinson, Naomi Ackie, and Mark Ruffalo, and was directed by Bong Joon-Ho. Based on Edward Ashton's 2022 novel Mickey 7, it tells the story of a man who signs up to be an expendable on a space voyage and is repeatedly cloned after his numerous deaths. I can tell you right now that this is the kind of movie a lot of people are going to be disappointed by. Not because it's a bad film, or because of any one character or plot element. Instead, it's simply because Mickey 17 isn't what a lot of people are going to expect it to be. This isn't just some sci-fi blockbuster. It's not a vehicle for Robert Pattinson. Those expecting something serious are in for a big surprise, but those expecting something traditionally comedic are also in for a surprise. Mickey 17 is definitely a Bong Joon-Ho film through and through, just with a big studio, big stars, and a big 100 million plus budget. Fans of the director's back catalog will be able to see how this movie fits into his filmography, but those only familiar with his Oscar-winning Parasite might be confused and a bit let down by this follow-up. Mickey 17 doesn't have the same nuance and delicate craftsmanship as Parasite. Instead, it's more akin to his big, occasionally absurd sledgehammer satire of old. This is more a follow-up to Okja than it is to Parasite. Although this film is an adaptation of a novel, it changes things up quite a bit when it comes to plot, characters, and even themes. But the book's solid premise shines through. And what a great premise. A future in which a man volunteers to be an expendable on a space mission, and his clones are used as research guinea pigs or sent on dangerous missions. It's a really compelling and darkly fun idea, but one that serves as just the basis for the sprawling, somewhat bloated story. This premise is delivered to the audience as a voiceover narrated flashback, which encapsulates the first act. The second act brings in the concept of multiples, which was teased in the trailers, and then the third act escalates into something that can only be described as a strange satirical cross between a big-budget sci-fi movie and an 80s Studio Ghibli environmental fantasy actioner. Mickey 17 is centered around a fun concept, and it never gets dull, even through all of its plot and tone shifts, but it is overlong and tries to cover too many story beats, so it never feels like it spends enough time on any one thing. This same issue extends to the themes as well. This film touches on a lot of really interesting thematic concepts. The ethics of cloning, the legal ramifications of the existence of multiples, the sledgehammer political parody on display with Kenneth Marshall and his entourage, colonialism, environmental issues, research ethics, Bong Joon-Ho's reliable go-tos of social conflict and class inequity. You name it, it's touched on here. Sometimes it's a blink and you'll miss it subtle nod, but more often than not, it's so extravagantly over the top that people 3 theaters down the hall will be able to pick up on the ideas. Unfortunately, just like with the multitude of storylines, very few of these themes are given the focus or time needed to be fully explored. They're all interesting and could serve as conversation starters, but once again, the film just tackles too much. So each individual theme has less of an impact overall than it would have if it were only half a dozen themes rather than 20. In addition to its cornucopia of storylines and themes, Mickey 17 is also full of some weird and memorable performances. There are quite a few very small roles that stick with you, like a pigeon-suited Wilhelm screaming Tim Key, for instance. But the biggest and weirdest of these bizarrely memorable roles is Mark Ruffalo as Kenneth Marshall, the corrupt, egotistical, failed politician turned expedition dictator. It doesn't take more than a few brief seconds to realize that the cinematic version of this character is more than loosely based on Donald Trump. Now, I get it. When you parody somebody who's already a parody in real life, you're gonna end up with something big and absurd. And there's definitely some humor to it, but Ruffalo plays the character so over the top that it starts to get more annoying than anything else. I found myself wishing that we instead had even more time with Mickey, or the Mickeys. Robert Pattinson also does a weird accent here, but delivers a fun and poignant, multifaceted performance in this dual role that's actually technically an octodecouple role. Mickey 17 is a big movie that tries to do way too much. It's far too interested in delivering its complex blended sauce than it is in taking the time to make sure each of those individual ingredients is ready for the puree setting. The thankfully tail-free sauce of Mickey 17 still tastes good. It's weird and tangy, and won't be a condiment for everybody. And even as a fan of this particular blend, I recognize that it doesn't pair well with everything, and it'll never be my first choice of sauce. However, it's still a unique and tasty concoction with a pleasant aftertaste. And if you're sitting there right now very confused by this extended sauce metaphor, I promise it'll make a bit more sense once you watch the movie. Until then, you can just think of it as a bizarre appetizer to get you in the right mindset for this equally bizarre film. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number one is definitely the premise. It's obviously drawn from the novel, but this idea of a man who signs up to be repeatedly cloned and killed is fascinating. It's probably no surprise that the first act, where this process and all the backstory occurs, is my favorite part of the film. Things get a bit complex as all the additional storylines and themes are piled on top, but that core premise is some really solid sci-fi. The second pro is Robert Pattinson. I think we're all well beyond the hate on Robert Pattinson because of Twilight stage of his career, but for some reason, I'm still always so pleasantly surprised by how good of an actor he actually is. And here, it's obvious to see that he managed to capture exactly what Bong Joon-Ho was going for. Mickey 17, the character, is just so weird. The bizarre accent, the personality and demeanor, it's all weird and not at all how you'd usually see Pattinson. But it's also perfect for this character. This is exactly the type of person who would sign up to be an expendable. And if that wasn't already impressive enough from a performance standpoint, Pattinson then also has to play the clones, including one with, shall we say, a slightly different personality. On the con side, the biggest issue is how overstuffed this film is. Nearly 2.5 hours long, and yet it still doesn't even come close to containing everything that's thrown into it. Huge plot lines, countless themes, tons of characters, abrupt story and tonal shifts, half a dozen different genres. This is a big movie with a bunch of big ideas and themes, but it just doesn't have the time to explore all of those ideas in any sort of substantial way. The second con is Mark Ruffalo as Kenneth Marshall. I fully realize that many people are going to find this character, along with his wife, played by Toni Collette, to be very, very funny, but it got old really fast for me. I know it's supposed to be an absurd parody, and I have no doubt that Ruffalo did exactly what Bong Joon-Ho wanted him to do here, but it was just so over the top that it crossed from humorous to just plain annoying after a while. Annoyance is obviously true to form here, but nearly every scene featuring this character just left me wishing we were focusing on anybody or anything else. Sounds familiar. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Mickey 17 or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Mickey 17 3.5 out of 5 paws. More in line with the style of pre-Parasite Bong Joon-Ho films, this movie is overstuffed with ideas and has the satirical subtlety of a sledgehammer, but with its great premise and fun set of performances by Robert Pattinson, this still has a lot of pieces to like. I would recommend Mickey 17 to people looking for a broad-scale satire that's barely disguised as a sci-fi blockbuster. If you're not expecting something a bit silly, you might be taken aback, but fans of pre-Parasite Bong Joon-Ho will recognize and appreciate many of the director's trademark sensibilities here in this film. If you liked Mickey 17, I would recommend Okja. This is another mostly English Bong Joon-Ho film that focuses on many similar themes, including corruption and power, possesses several abrupt tonal shifts, and even features a fantastical creature that's more than a little reminiscent of the Creepers. If you liked the basic sci-fi premise of this movie, you might want to watch Moon. This film stars Sam Rockwell as a man on a 3-year solo space mission who has a bit of an identity crisis that'll be familiar to fans of Mickey 17. And if you'd like another sci-fi blockbuster combo, you should check out The Island. There are some similar plot elements when it comes to the sci-fi stuff, and this is another film that has some very significant story and tonal shifts as it progresses. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Mickey 17? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite movie about clones? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe or at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.